when we really get to that point, when they're in the church and everything kind of like comes to a head, I can't. When I tell you that when that angel came through the door and the eyes were glowing, that's I literally screamed. I actually like lost
Mm.
I actually like lost myself when that happened. And then the
That was
wings
sad.
opened and I was like, "Oh, oh, this is." And in your head you're like, "Now this is the point where everyone realizes something is wrong. This is the point where we realize we've gone too far." But then again, Father Paul is like, "It's an angel. It's the angel. He has been bringing us these miracles. An angel has blessed our
You're like,
town."
shut
And then
up.
it's
Yeah.
like, that's not an angel. I'd never seen an angel before. I don't know what an angel looks like, but that's not it. I know that in the Bible it says angels have eyes all over their bodies and like all that stuff, but like it looks more like a fallen angel than an angel. Like you can't tell me
Right?
Gabriel or Michael looks like this guy right here. Like I refuse to believe it.
Absolutely. It's just like, okay. Tell me you don't know what angels are without telling me you don't.
Yeah. But it also plays into the fact that this town is like so infatuated and they're just kind of delusional due to all the
Mhm.
miracles. They're just willing to kind of go along with it because if you don't go along with everyone else is doing, then you're not like you're kind of like out on your own. You're like SOL, and they don't want to have to deal with that. And it's interesting to see like not only the obviously the people who don't go to church, like the doctor who is a lesbian, the sheriff who is Muslim, but also like the kids. Because the funny thing is that in the Christian faith, Christians are told to be like children. Like
Yeah.
Jesus tells Christians to be like children, believing and having hearts open to faith and to hope. And to have like the young teenagers not subscribe to like what's going on should really stick out to you that something really is wrong here. Because if you have young people that are meant to be easily manipulated and easily pressured into things, and like you have three of them that are like, no, 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 no. Actually, I'm not gonna do
Hmm.
this. That's when it should let you know that like the group of people you're meant to imitate in your faith don't even want to participate in whatever it is y'all got going on. Means y'all should not be doing what y'all are doing. It's
Yeah.
not right.
How many more mistakes should we make before I just tell you? Let's not and say we did.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie. Like the last episode is truly like the crazy. It's probably one of the craziest episodes of TV I've ever watched because it's just full out on war.
Hmm.
You're sitting there watching for an hour, like, what's going to happen? And whenever I watch horror movies, I always go in with no expectations. Or like a
Hmm.
horror show, I go with no expectations. I'm not making any assumptions, I'm just going to watch. But there gets to a certain point when you realize how, like, oh, we're all going to die here.
We're gonna die.
Yeah, like no one's getting out of this under like we're all screwed. And I really did think that. Luckily, Lisa and Warren got out okay, but like I think it was at the point where what was it? Oh yeah, when Bev tells the congregation to like burn everything down, that's when I realized like yeah, it's over. It's over for us. And then when the angel holds down Aaron, I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's
And it's
done."
earned. You don't feel like a character's just doing it because the movie now demands it. It's like, no,
Mhm.
they have actually gotten to that point in their
Mhm.
lives where now whatever this is, they don't condone it. They aren't with it. They're you can tell them it's whatever they used to believe in. They're like, whatever this is, that's not it. I refuse to accept this. And it's not a sacred ground anymore. I can question it.
And I do agree with your point that you made earlier that like sometimes when you're watching a film, it feels like things are happening in the plot, in the movie, in the show, and it doesn't really feel like anything is like
Mhm.
well thought out or like well written, and things are just kind of happening. Like, there'll be a
Yeah.
time when you're watching a movie and you have a certain ending where it's like, if I ever watch a movie and they have like a scorch earth ending, that's when I know you really didn't put a lot of thought into it.
No.
Because
What was the
midnight
thought?
yeah, like midnight mass, you could very easily do this is a scorch earth ending. Like, you could very
We're
easily
going
be,
to die.
yeah, you could very easily be like, screw it, this whole town of people are going to die or disappear or burn up into ashes, and nobody's going to know why. It's going to be like Roanoke. Like, no one has an explanation as to what happened. But
Hmm.
Mike Flanagan did not do that, because it's interesting to see, like, Lee, who are Leva? I think Leva and
I
Warren,
think it's Leva. Yeah.
yeah, Lisa and Warren, they are
Please.
able to avoid the carnage, but they're the first two people that you kind of like focus in on at the beginning of the show, because they seem to be the ones with the most devout faith, and they're the youngest. And it's
Yeah.
nice to see like the two most hopeful people in the show make it out alive. And you really have to put your thinking cap on, because when you're writing a show as complex as like talking about, religious extremism, talking about small
You
town
don't want the
politics.
crappy ending and you don't want
Yeah.
the happy ending. You
Uh
don't
huh.
want to just feel like it was last minute. And kudos to him for they like what he's doing, so they leave him alone. And he's not the kind of guy who's just worried about overspending as much as he is. Does it make sense?
Mm hmm.
Just, and I'm sure this didn't happen overnight. I'm sure everybody had to just really think this out real fast. It's like, how are we going to stage this? How are we going to film this? And it just shows. And unfortunately, it is one of those you just don't know until you get to that end of the tunnel and you
Mm hmm.
see what they have to display.
I also like that Mike Flanagan is the kind of writer where, like, he doesn't show the actors the full script, but that's fine because they trust
Oh,
him
really?
as a
I
creative.
didn't know, but that makes sense
I
because
think that the lead actor who plays Father Paul, he knew what was going to happen at the end, but everyone else, they didn't really know. I think the mystery is one of the most fun parts of the show, and
yeah,
I did enjoy, I guess, like the last two episodes when things really just like kind of come to a head, and I think it's interesting to see how people react to their own mortality, because it's not something that people
yes,
think about a lot. It's not something you want to consider if you're like a living person. You don't really think about like the fact that like we're not going to be here one day. But when you really have to like stare down the barrel of the gun and understand that like when the sun comes up it's done for you, what do you do in your last moments? And like Bev trying to literally dig a hole for herself so that she can live another
yeah.
day is crazy
Oh
to
my
me.
word! Right?
Like, girl, you have to face the consequences for your actions. You've been doling out all this punishment to people, and yet when you have to receive it one day, you are too scared to face it. And you know what?
Yeah,
That's not my problem.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I do love that Riley's parents, even though they did turn to vampires, they weren't bloodthirsty like everybody else. So I feel like that follows my earlier point where, like, sometimes people are just too quick to fall in line with others when you don't have to do that. You can stand alone. And I remember, like, gosh, the last scene where they're singing Nearer, My God, to Thee, I actually was, like, very sad because it's such a beautiful moment where you're just kind of like, they understand that, like, this is it. This is the end. Like, I'm kind of just, like, surrendering myself to the
I
narrative that
mean,
is
I
doing me.
literally surrendered myself from the get go. I'm like, you
Yeah.
have my complete trust of your mistrust.
Yeah.
Like, I
Exactly.
know you're not playing it safe, but I also know you're not pulling this out of somewhere because why not? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so it's kind of like how I am with like twist endings. It's like, okay, so David Lynch is never going to wrap it up, but that's literally his style.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with a controversial filmmaker. I know Oliver Stone's going to go on a rant. I know Spike Lee is going to kind of use like a shock comic, just kind of make a statement and then draw you in with this. Like, now that I know I mean something bigger, now listen to what I have to say. It's just, everybody has that signature. Like William Friedkin is notorious for believing absolute bullshit, but he's a hell of a filmmaker because he believes his bullshit, so he commits. So you're just like, okay, that didn't make a lick of sense, but that was very well done. But it's bullshit still, but it's
Right.
well done bullshit. So it's interesting how we just have these special guys who they know every tool that's in their shed and they're ready to put it to work.